for the topics that are for retinoblastoma. And then those of us who are kind of working in the professional space are committed to all the rest of everything. And in a way, we've already got some of those things partly developed because there was an awful lot of work on what were the top 10 priorities. Mm-hmm. And we can go back either to the base work behind it or just to the priorities and test drive it a little bit and probably come up with 2 or 3 that are the areas to go forward. And it may be that the Damaris Lab has already got all that well in hand and they don't need to hear from any of us, but I just wanted it on the table so that nobody is kind of under any illusion about where we're working. This is leading edge stuff. Patient-reported outcome measures are going to be the way that institutions justify their existence, measure how they're working, and how people plug in. And this is where one of the places that, you know, families and patients can actually really move the goalposts a bit. So just like the question about the roadmap in a way, or the question about SPORE, the patient outcomes from early this morning, they're not even in the implementation phase. They're not in the proving that they reduced the health visits to ER and saved money. We're in the proving we can make the concept work stage. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Okay, really, yeah. Thanks very much for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Does anyone else have any questions before we get started for today?
Oh, sorry, I have one more. So for almost every other thing we do, you have control groups. And I wondered about the possibility of having, you know, who's age matched and in the environment that we could ask the same questions to, expecting a different outcome. And I guess family members would work, but they're kind of invested in it. And my next row out would be to say, if we got the pre-op nurses or the OR nurses to fill it out about themselves and answer the same questions, what kind of responses we'd get. Or to ask the health professionals, like I would fill one out if I knew it wasn't going in the everybody category about a question. So thanks to considering that.
Yeah, so proms are interesting because it's one of those things where you don't need a control group because the scoring is actually made or developed based on the population, the sample. So if we were to have other individuals complete the prom, then the scoring may be a little bit skewed. So what we do is instead we try to get as representative of a sample as possible so that we can really ensure that our scores mean something. And that's how we will then be able to know if, you know, if a certain score, like a low score, what does it mean? What does a high score mean? What do the scores in the middle mean? So that's why a lot of statistics go into the validation of the questionnaire. And that's also why it's very important to have a very, very large sample size complete the prom during the testing phase so that we can capture all those experiences. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome back to today's workshop. I know yesterday we were a little bit short on time and I realized we didn't really get to introduce ourselves to one another. So I thought maybe we could take the first 5 minutes or so and we can go through everyone if everyone wants to just briefly kind of introduce themselves so we know who we're in this workshop with. And if you're comfortable, I will just go through the names starting with our individuals online if that's okay. But if you don't feel comfortable speaking, that's completely okay. You can just put your hands up or something and we'll move on to the next person. Does that sound okay? Ivana, did you want to? Sorry, everyone, but the mic here.
So I have, I see Robin first.
Okay.
I see Robin first, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Robin Adlam. I am a bilateral retinoblastoma survivor. I tell my kids I'm 29 again, but actually 45. This is my first time coming to something like this. I'm finding it fascinating and realizing that there's more people out there dealing with similar things that I'm dealing with. So it's definitely expanding my isolation window, I guess. So thank you.
We're very happy to have you. Welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Lynn, if you would like to share.
Yeah, hi again. It's me, Lynn, from Lebanon. I am 24 years old, unilateral retinoblastoma, and I am a member in the biobank.
Yeah, Lynn had that wonderful presentation this afternoon.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening, guys.
Sumreen, I have you listed next if you would like to introduce yourself.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Samreen Siddiqui. I am a retinoblastoma survivor. I have also encountered, well, now I'm dealing with my fourth cancer after retinoblastoma. So going through treatment for that presently. Professionally, I am a vision rehabilitation therapist with Vision Loss Rehabilitation Ontario, a division of CNIB, and I've been with the agency for a little over 23 years. And my work involves teaching daily living skills to people with vision loss, as well as providing some supportive counseling as well.
Thank you so much, Sumreen. Next, I have Scott on the list. Would you like to say hello, Scott?
Sure. I'm Scott, bilateral retinoblastoma survivor, 28 years old, fourth generation survivor. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for attending this workshop. It's very important information we're gathering. I'll pass it over to our in-person. Michelle, you're next kind of in line here if you would like to say hello.
All right, I think I need to use the mic. Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm 24, and I'm a third generation bilateral RV survivor. I gave the talk on my experience working on FaceQ just before lunch. But otherwise, I've been involved with a bunch of projects in the lab at this point, biobank, etc. Yeah.
Awesome. JQ, 34 bilateral survivor, second gen. And who knows about the next gen, right? So we'll see.
Hi there, I'm Genevieve. I am a unilateral survivor. I'm almost 40. And I'm the current president of the Canadian Retinoblastoma Society, and we offer peer support, education, and advocacy skills to individuals touched by retinoblastoma. And I'd love for all of you to connect with us and me, and find community within this group. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much. Vancouver.
Oh, hi, I'm Angus. I'm almost 50 years old, first generation bilateral retinoblastoma survivor. And yeah, I'm here to get involved and learn about stuff. And I have a son who's also bilateral retinoblastoma as well. He's 10.
Hi, I'm Catherine. You heard me talk yesterday, and I am really privileged to join all of you today. Thank you. I was asked once by one of my retinoblastoma kids about my kids, and I had to say to him, "You are all my kids." And it was really meaningful, and it put it really in perspective for me that he asked me.
Well, we're very happy to have everyone here. Did I miss anyone? Just in case I didn't see someone's name. If anyone.
Farheen.
Yes, Farheen, may you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Hello, everyone. I think I introduced myself a little bit yesterday, but I am a third-year PhD student working with Dr. Helen Damaris. I actually didn't know anything about retinoblastoma before starting this project. I actually didn't know anything about PROMs before starting this project either. I did biochem in undergrad, and what I'm doing now is very different, but it's very rewarding to learn about retinoblastoma and the lived experiences, not just through literature, but by actually connecting with patients, survivors, and families like everyone here today, and working towards making tools that will hopefully give everyone a voice in how they feel about their care and their treatment and their lived experiences. Yeah. Did you want to say anything, Eva?
I think we're good to get started.
Okay, so Robin, I think thank you for joining us today. We're just going to continue from what we started yesterday. So there's a few more questions we're going to work through today. We would like your input in the discussion, if that's okay. But for the next parts of the questionnaire, please do join us in voting and in putting in your input in the Google Forms. Does that sound okay? Okay, awesome. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. We didn't get through the entire section of the questionnaire yesterday, but we did come to the consensus of, I believe, the first 6 questions or so. So we just have another 6 questions to go through, and then we'll move on to the next section of this prompt. Does anyone have any questions, though, before we get started? Okay.
Oh, she shared her screen.
Okay, so the last question we talked about yesterday was how much do you like how your eyes look when you smile? The next question we have here is how much do you like how even your eyes look or how level they are with each other? Now, if I pull up that question here, it looks like almost everyone said they wanted to keep this question, but we had one individual who thought about dropping that question. Not sure if everyone remembers what they picked yesterday, but if the individual who selected drop, if you're comfortable, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us why, and also for anyone who is joining us for the first time today, Michelle and Robin, if you have any opinions on whether you think this question should be kept in the questionnaire, if it should be dropped, or if you're neutral.
Real quick on the form, is it like
Jason.
yeah. Just logistics wise on the form, is it blue, like on the columns, there's a blue column, is that keep, and then red is maybe? Okay. Okay, thanks.
I was the one who listed drop for all of the next 6. And the reason why was just as I was scanning through the rest of the questions, it kind of felt redundant at some point, where it was like, if I already know, we've already talked about the appearance of how my face looks or how I feel about that, then the rest of them kind of felt like the same question and less relevant. Because if I don't like it in general, then the rest of them kind of just followed. So not a lot of value to me reporting on it, I felt, especially if there wasn't a specific care path or plan related to like, oh, heads up, Jay, you could go get plastic surgery if you wanted to, or So I just couldn't see a clear correlation between why I was answering the question versus what the benefit would be.
Thank you for sharing that, Jay. Does anyone have anything to add to that or feel similarly to Jay?
Yeah, actually, I'm similar to Jay. at first sight. And the second, I have to say that in a normal case, which a normal person who hasn't retinoblastoma, the measurement of the face isn't dissimilar one to another. So if you have RB and without the plastic surgeries and all this stuff, the question isn't valuable, because
Okay.
we know that they are not the same and they don't have the same measurement.
Yeah. I think there's one thing I may actually not have mentioned to everyone yesterday, so I think I'll take this opportunity to share. Thank you, Lynn, for your perspective. So, in the original Face Q, they only had this section of the questionnaire known as appearance of the eyes. And a lot of the questions you're looking at here are existing, and we added maybe 2 or 3 more. But what we realized is how, like, there's so much diversity in the retinoblastoma experience. You have unilateral patients, you have bilateral patients, you have patients who wear a prosthetic eye, you have patients who don't. So it's really hard to get one section of the questionnaire really addressing all those different experiences. So what we actually did is we made it so that this specific section that we're looking at, appearance of the eyes, is actually specifically if you I don't know if I can pull it up here. Let me see. Yes, I can. So it says, if you wear a prosthetic eye, please answer thinking of your living eye. And the reason we did that is because we felt that there are specific questions that are applicable only to patients who wear a prosthetic eye about their appearance, but we can't really ask them to individuals who may not wear a prosthetic eye. So we have another version of this questionnaire, or this section of the questionnaire that's specifically about the prosthetic eye, but I decided not to bring it to this meeting because I wanted to only bring questions that I thought would be applicable to everyone, and I didn't want to make it so that, you know, individuals who don't wear a prosthetic eye just feel like they're sitting and listening. So I just want to let everyone know that, in case you feel, well, I don't know, like this may not be relevant to me because I wear a prosthetic eye and I'm not, you know, maybe I think it was discussed yesterday too, like obviously they don't match, or like they do match, or there are differences. It is covered in the questionnaire. We're just not talking about that today. Is that, does that kind of clarify things for everybody? Okay, so thank you again, Lynn and Jay, for sharing your perspective on this question. The how much do you like how even your eyes look, how level they are with each other. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on their perspective about this question, or are we okay to move to voting on the final consensus?
I just have another comment I wanted to mention. So there's one other thing I wanted to mention. There was a discussion I had last night with my partner because, you know, I think all probably go home with full brains and talk about the events that have gone on all day. And I think one of the things I've noticed about this discussion is that we don't all feel the same about these questions. And my concern, or in the back of my head, I'm thinking, what if someone comes to fill this out and they're exactly what Jay said, is they're not concerned about their appearance? And I think Angus alluded to this as well yesterday, is like, I've accepted myself. So are we creating language and concerns for people that might not have otherwise thought about this? And are we seeding maybe some of our young people to think, well, no, I wasn't worried about how even my eyes look, but should I be? Should I be concerned about that? So I want to make sure that we're mindful of that as well, that we're not placing concerns in people's heads when they wouldn't have had them and they've accepted aspects of their appearance. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I touch on that point again?
Yep.
I thought a little bit more about that, and Dr. Payne and I were talking about this. And one of the things that I actually wasn't considering, because I look at this issue as from my own perspective, right? I've lived with this my whole life, but I didn't consider culture, gender, age, right? And I think if I look back and you think about someone who's my generation, I'll be 50 this year. I've had this issue since 1974, 1975. We didn't have cell phones and TikToks and digital cameras and all that stuff, right? Where people taking pictures and posting them on social media. You were who you were, and your friends learned to accept you, and you moved on with life. That's how we grew up. The generation now, they have a very big concern about how they look because they're always plastered on some form of social media, some TikTok, some YouTube or whatever they happen to be doing. So I could see how these questions could be relevant to a younger generation compared to an old generation. And I can also see how the old generation might be a little more dismissive because they've grown confident, they've grown in their life, they've grown in their social, they've grown a family. Why is their look a concern? They are who they are, and their look is what you got. Like I think, to quote Tom Cruise in the new Top Gun movie, one of the guys comments, "I don't like your look," and he says, "It's the only one I got," right? And I find that for myself, this is my look. This is how I am. I can't change this. So, I've just learned to move on. So, yeah, I could see how it can be difficult to answer some of these questions depending on what generation you're from.
Yeah, thank you for the insight, both Angus and Genevieve. I'm going to try to address them both. So, Genevieve, I really like your point, and that is very much something that we have considered because you're right. If someone's very young, if they're 8 years old, 10 years old, maybe they're not at that stage where they're kind of self-conscious about their appearance. So, how do we know that these questions are not introducing these kinds of worries or concerns to them? And so we're actually testing that in this field testing phase. So at the very end, so we're actually asking everyone to complete the questionnaire twice. Once when they first completed, and then once again a week after they completed for the first time. And that's to check some, statistics on reliability and all that stuff. So after individuals complete it for the second time, at the very end, we actually have an optional end of study survey where we ask them, what do you think are the benefits of having completed something like this? What do you think are the drawbacks of having completed something like this? And then we can use that data as, qualitatively to showcase that either, no, you know what, this is a problem to people, or you know what, maybe it's not a problem to people. I think that's very important feedback to get. So that's how we're kind of trying to address that part there. And Angus, what you said is also very true because again, I think what's really interesting about RB compared to some of the other patient populations that I'm working with for the survey is something like strabismus surgery. You kind of get the surgery and then like you have the side effects of the surgery for a little bit, but then typically if it's successful, it's kind of just there, done, you move on type of thing. But what RB, it's kind of like you live with the consequences of your treatments or of your conditions pretty much for life, right? And so I think you're kind of growing with your experiences, you're becoming more comfortable, you're learning to accept yourself. And you're right, like maybe people who are older may have already overcome all those feelings. But I think a prom could be a great way to capture that as someone grows up. A good way to capture, maybe 3 years ago, I was experiencing this and I really needed psychosocial help. I filled out this prom, my ophthalmologist or social worker, ocularist picked up on my psychosocial needs. They referred me to someone. And then you complete this prom again 6 years later, and you realize you're scoring higher because you were able to get the help that you needed, or maybe even without the help, just through your environment and the people that you interact with, maybe you just became more confident. And now that is reflecting in the prom. So that's kind of how I see it being used. I hope that kind of addresses everyone's concern. If anyone has any other questions, I'm more than open to discussing them before we move forward.
I'll say one more thing if I can. I
Yeah.
think also when it comes to children, from my own experience, I was probably 7 years old when I really realized that I was a little different than the other kids.
Mhm.
And it kind of came from the fact that some of the other kids were, I don't want to use any bold words, but definitely teasing me a little bit about my looks, and I had to learn a coping mechanism, which it turns out is humor. But, I think kids can go different ways. You can learn to cope and move on, or you can fall apart and look for support because, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the strongest, but, and whatever path you choose, you have to learn to live with that. So I agree with you that giving this kind of a survey throughout a child's life, I think is actually quite beneficial. You know, you can check in and see where they're at, because they might be good with it at one age and they turn 10 or 11 and all of a sudden social aspects change. Now they're not cool with it anymore. You know, it can kind of give some idea of where support needs to be provided, or what kind of age groups we should look at in providing resources.
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that. It makes me feel like I'm doing something. So thank you for all that insight, everybody. Michelle, did you want to say something too?
Sure.
Mhm.
I have turned from, at least in this particular question, I don't remember what the other like following couple ones are. I've turned from a keep to a maybe. I would like, I don't have super strong feelings for or against just because I can see both sides of it. I think I became aware of how even my eyes looked when I was like 5 or 6. And that was because my parents asked about strabismus surgery to my doctor, like in front of me. And then, in the years like, grade 2, 3, beyond, that was when people started like commenting on my appearance. So these kids are usually aware of it earlier than you may think. I think some of the general like being aware of how you position yourself socially, like that does come when you're a little bit older. But I don't know. I'm on the fence about it now because I think the questionnaire, I'm not sure if it would be what tips the scales of insecurity in a lot of cases, but at the same time, it is something to consider. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's there's just everybody's so different. Everybody thinks so differently. And I think it's really important to get that input while making this to ensure that, at the end of the day, that this is something helpful and not something harmful. So thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts. And just maybe for the sake of time, I will move on. So if we wouldn't mind, please voting on how we feel about this question after everything we've discussed. So again, the question is, how much do you like how even your eyes look or how level they are with each other? If you're online or our Vancouver friends, you're using your thumbs up, your thumbs down, or your hands for neutral. And our friends here, your green, yellow, and red sheets.
Also, any virtual, if you wanted, you could use the chat function to type your answer or unmute and verbally tell us your answer.
Can I be like, like leaning this way?
Having that definitely changed how I felt about lots of stuff too.
I'm sharing the screen.
We'd just like to say that discussion helps move people's opinions.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you first come to it, when you first fill out the questionnaire, you're kind of just thinking about your own lived experience, but then you realize how diverse everybody's experiences is. And I think it's a really cool way to learn from one another.
I think having children with it as well really changes your perspective, because you have your own perspective from growing up, but then you're now raising a kid who has the same issue you had, and you are the one making the decisions. And I think a lot of that can come down to, what kind of parent are you? Are you an educational parent, or are you a hiding parent? Do you keep them in the dark and just, life's great, move on? Or do you explain to them what's actually going on so they understand and they can have an answer based in knowledge to give to people if they get questioned, right? And yeah, it's complex, that's for sure.
Actually, I have a small question. If there's any problem if I respond to the form that you sent, and here I've changed my mind in some questions.
Sorry, which form are you talking about? Are you talking about the one that I sent by email, or are you
Yeah,
talking about
right.
the one that you completed yesterday?
No, but the email that you
Yeah,
sent by the
Yeah, so that's exactly why I asked. I preferred that everyone completed the one I sent by email before this discussion, because when you complete that before the discussion, you're actually just thinking based on your experience. There's no bias going into it. But now that we've discussed, you now are aware of everybody else's experiences. So the way you answer might change. And that's exactly why I asked everyone to complete the questionnaire beforehand. So you're completely okay. I expected this change in experience. And thank you so much for having completed the questionnaire beforehand.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so we'll go to the next question then, which was how much do you like the shape of your eyes, like round or droopy? I think from yesterday, it seemed that we had 3 keeps, 1 maybe, and 2 drops. So is there anybody who would like to discuss why they may have picked what they picked?
Okay, I'll go. I picked I accepted it based on the fact of my own experience of accepting how I look. But I also thought the word liked I don't know if liked is a good word. I mean, I think when it comes to your own personal look, do you like it or do you accept it? And are those the same thing?
Yeah, so we did discuss a lot of words like satisfied, accept, like, and the reason we ended up sticking to like is because the youngest individuals who would be eligible to complete the survey are 8 years old. So we wanted to make sure that the language was as simple as possible. And just to share with everyone how we did that, the first thing is we did have study participants who were very young, 8 years old, but we also used a readability calculator where we would put in our sentences and then they would assign the sentence a grade level for reading. So we made sure that it was kept at grade 3, and we also worked with even Michelle and Genevieve and all our patient partners to ensure that the language was as simple as possible.
Fair enough.
But all great questions, so thank you.
One I might add is there's droopy and what's the other one? Round. In terms of maybe additional adjectives, if you were to add, I noticed like the sunkenness in some ways, like some of us do have that, like my eyes are pretty sunk. And so that was one thing that stuck out to me.
Can I just mention that culturally, the physical appearance, like the words are hard to capture because there may be a teardrop shape or a different angle or slant that is, again, appropriate to racial configuration. So I don't know how you capture that in here, but can I ask Jay and put Jay on the spot? Jay, do you think what I just asked about matters, or is it clear to you?
That's a good question because I guess like even as I look around the room, right, like with Genevieve, right, like not as sunken, and then someone there's a man downstairs who we saw whose eyes were quite sunken like mine, and I was like, oh well, if we could have like lifted that out a little bit, might have helped me. Would it have helped me navigate childhood a little bit better? Maybe, right? And like I don't know what, yeah, due to the radiation, right? And so it's like, is there any way around that? Or to Angus's point, like to be honest, like at the point where plastic surgery, like I probably wouldn't do it. I feel pretty comfortable with how I look now. We're here at 34. It's kind of like, what's really going to change in terms of confidence level, right? Because I think I'm at that point. So to your point, or to your question, Catherine, about does the racial aspect matter? I don't think as much. Because I think the sentiment of like the sunkenness, I've seen it across races, and so.
But I don't see the word sunken in here, or am I missing something?
No.
I understand that that's what you take from the question, but I don't think that's what the question says, right? So.
Yeah, that was my proposed addition to the question in terms of like the droopiness or the other pieces. Yeah, that's actually why I originally proposed just chucking the question out, because I was like, well, does it really matter? Really what matters to me is like, I know I have a sunken face. Is there anything on reported outcomes there? Probably. More so than like the droopiness.
I have to agree with you on that, Jay. I think that question needs a few more descriptive words.
Thank you everyone for your input. Yeah, so one way that we've tried to tackle all those different experiences has been, you don't see it here, but you may have seen it if you completed the survey that I sent in the email, is we have a comment section. And the reason for the comment section is to really expand on how you may have answered some of these questions. So for example, maybe one way would have been if you were to see how much do you like the shape of your eyes, like round or droopy, maybe you would have selected something like a little bit, not at all, maybe. And maybe it wasn't because of the roundness or the droopiness, but in that comment section, that's where you can kind of expand and say, you know, I feel this way because of X, Y, Z. So it's not the most standardized way of being able to talk about that experience, but it is an additional space if there is something that you want to highlight that's not in the questionnaire.
Yeah, I feel like that question is kind of two-dimensional though. Like, I kind of have to agree with Jay, like if it said, how do you like your eyes, round, droopy or sunken, right?
Mm.
That gives three perspectives because you might have round and sunken, you might have droopy and sunken, you might have droopy and round, you know what I mean? I think it opens it up a little bit more with just an addition of one more word.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Thank you so much. I will definitely keep that in mind.
I'm in favor of adding sunken as well. Oh, my mic's not working. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I am in favor of adding the third word as sunken as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think, again, for the sake of time, I'll just move forward. So if we wouldn't mind, please voting for the consensus of this question, and I'll repeat it again for everybody. It's how much do you like the shape of your eyes, like like round or droopy?
Can I say with the caveat that we add something to it?
I can't. Are we a yes now?
We're a yes if it gets changed. Right?
I will just say, unfortunately, I can no longer change the questions. I
Really?
can only drop. I'm so sorry that we weren't able to capture that, but if there is a way I can maybe revise something, I may try. I will try, but just due to the way the study is designed and structured, unfortunately, I won't be able to change the wording about that. I apologize. It's not because your input's not important, but it's just because of how it's designed. But I will keep that as a note so that when we do get to the post-statistics phase of the project, if I notice that this question's not working well, I will then know that this may be one of the reasons.
That's fair.
Thank you, everyone. Are you okay with the photo?
Yeah, I got this.
Oh, awesome. So we have everybody? Oh, awesome. All right, so I'll go to the next question then. The next question was, how much do you like how well your eyes match each other or look the same? And for that question, I think we had 4 keeps and 2 drops. So does anybody want to talk about their perspective on that question?
Yeah, actually for me, I just clicked drop because my eyes don't look similar to each other, even with the three plastic surgeries. So unfortunately, it's an anxious question for me.
Mhm.
And otherwise, I really like my normal eye. I like the color of my eye and how it's look, but for my prosthetic, they didn't match.
Thank you for sharing that, Lynn, and for being open and vulnerable to sharing that with all of us here. Does anyone else would anyone else like to add their perspective? Do they agree with Lynn? Yeah.
I have to agree with Lynn as well. You know, my eyes match, but that's only because of the person who made the prosthetic, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with what good of a product did you purchase, right?
I've thought about this one a lot as well. And I think that when we're looking at the broader use of this tool and you ask the question to someone how much you like your eyes matching, that answering this question would open up a lot of dialogue. So why do you not like? Is there, you know, a droopiness in the lid? Is there a lot of, you know, discoloring, or their scar tissue, or there other issues? So I feel like this is a question that is a gatekeeper to more discussion and potential referrals. Maybe there is plastic surgery, maybe there is an eyelid procedure, maybe there is something that can help through drops or whatever else. And I had the same opinion about color when I had this first discussion, which is one of the other questions, was to say, you know, why would I be concerned about color? Of course, like that's my oculars department and they do a wonderful job. And of course, Dr. Damaris gave me a brief moment of a humble reminder that in Canada, we have access to amazing clinicians and practitioners, and that not everybody in the world gets to work with ocularists who are as skilled as ours. And so many people do come away with eyes that don't look the same as their natural eye. And so that's not our experience very commonly, but that is the experience of others. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that as well. When I was reading that, I really thought about the eye itself, and I had that, you know, what I voiced earlier. I had that was my first go-to. But then I recalled watching a TV show called How It's Made, and they had an episode on how prosthetic eyes are made. Well, as far as my entire experience for 49 years, my artificial eyes are made by hand by someone who takes a mold, blends the colors, you know, shapes it. It's never been made mass produced off a factory. So, you know, I guess things are a bit different elsewhere in the world, and I don't really have that sort of perspective.
Oh,
Actually,
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
Okay. I think I don't remember off the top of my head with this version of the survey whether this is addressed in another question, but I think for those who don't have a prosthetic, this question is kind of relevant because usually you end up with some kind of strabismus or other kind of like asymmetry, and that is the bulk of the insecurity or like any kind of like adverse psychosocial outcome was people's response to them not lining up. Yeah. And so when I see the question and is it matching, like I think of it as the strabismus part of it, which is relevant, at least in my case. So that's why I was kind of in favor of keeping it in the early versions of the survey, kind of with the acknowledgement that there are other questions designed for like people with prosthetics. And so generally I was pretty generous with keeping questions early on just to see like if we can get the bulk of the experiences, even if it means like a question or two not necessarily applying in your case. But yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's thank you for sharing that, Michelle. And before I give my input, I just like I think even you wanted to share something as well.
Okay, I'm not, I just wanted to, maybe if I heard some different answers, so maybe Farheen, if I'm totally off, then you know, we can scratch this out. But I wonder if it's, when someone's looking at the questions, are they thinking, do I like this question as in I want to answer it? Or you're saying, no, like, I don't want to think about this right now. And how Dr. Payton had, sorry, I think it was earlier in the panel, asked us how we feel about some of these types of discussions. I believe we had that. Yeah, so when voting, are some people perhaps thinking, I just don't like this, I don't want to talk about this, so let's drop it? And if you're not, that's totally cool. Or if you are, I just wanted to maybe, if that could be the part of the discussion, saying, like, I don't want to talk about this question, you could skip it if you want. That's totally great too. But the question I think that we want to ask ourselves when we're thinking of the question is should we keep this question in the survey so that in the scenario of it being used in a clinic maybe type setting, somebody filling it out could fill it out and it's relevant for the person who looks at the results, I don't know, they could do something about it or address it or help that person who filled it out get that problem addressed or direct them in the right direction.
No, you're completely right. Even I was actually just gonna kind of reiterate that right now because I understand everyone's sharing different perspectives, and I just want to make sure we're all still on the same page in terms of the objective of this workshop. So what we're trying to do is these are the questions that are in the questionnaire that we're testing. And so there's nothing I can do in terms of adding anything or changing anything right now. And what we're doing today is we're trying to determine that if this questionnaire were to be used in clinic, like, do you think there are like these questions are good to keep because you'll be able either clinicians will be able to do something about it, or this is something that will help us understand patients' needs better or patients' experiences better. So that's kind of what the goal is. We know that we're going to have this questionnaire, and to make it shorter, we want to ensure that we only have questions that are most effective. But again, I mentioned yesterday that I'll be using statistics to determine that, but statistics is not enough because lived experience is just as important. So if there is a question where based on your experience, you don't like it, you don't want to talk about it, that's completely okay. Please do share it with us. And maybe if you feel that way, you can still choose drop, that's fine. But I think it's also important for all of us to think about the final goal of the questionnaire as well. Did you want to share something? Yeah.
Just a quick comment on proms in general. I guess as I think about what would be most valuable, and this is a bit rogue, so let me know if I'm going too off track. But proms that actually have an effect on like the clinical visit matter more to me. So like appearance of my eye isn't something that I'm going to change anytime soon. Maybe I might change a prosthetic if I have access, and that conversation happened. But things like wait time, right? Things like explanation of quality of my care plan. Did the clinician explain things in easy to understand terminology? So I get that this is a face cue and it's all about appearance. I guess if you're looking for input as to like what's most valuable, you could probably knock out. And I noticed going through all the questions last night, there are a lot of them. It's actually like you could probably pick off like the top, like one or two, and then the rest of the questions that are prom related should be more so like, how is the satisfaction of like, do you understand what your care plan is? Do you understand what you're doing for monitoring? What was wait times like today? Was that okay? You know, like all of those that are tied more into like my experience that will feed into future visits with an ocularist or ophthalmologist or whoever. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that input, Jay. And you are right, there are a lot of questions. And yeah, like it may be burdensome for patients to complete all those questions. I do want to also mention that when you filled out the survey, you may have noticed that there were a lot of different pages or different sections. So because we're testing it right now, we're asking everyone to complete every single question. And I'm so sorry, but so grateful that you're taking the time to complete every single question. But in clinic use, actually, patients wouldn't have to answer all of them because maybe a patient comes in and they already express, appearance doesn't bother me, but maybe it's like a psychosocial concern that they have. So then they'd only complete the psychosocial section because that's what the clinician wants to target in that appointment, for example. So all of the sections are actually independent. It's not one full questionnaire that's meant to be used together, but for the testing purposes, just so we can get all of the data, for now, we're asking individual or participants to complete everything. But in the clinic, hopefully that will not be the case because you're right, 70 questions is a lot. So thank you for that input, Jay. Yep. Okay, so I think we can do our consensus voting for this one. So again, the question is, how much do you like how well your eyes match each other or look the same? And if you wouldn't mind, please providing us with your final vote on whether you want to keep this question, drop it, or if you feel neutral.
Sorry. It's a big difference. Have a real eye or prosthetic eye. But maybe it's really different if I have a front.
And if your eye doesn't see very well, it'll be turned anyway.
Exactly. Do you know, I had a thought earlier. Technology is so coming along so well. TVs are so flat, they can put imaging in clothing. What if we made a prosthetic eye with a screen on it that connected to the muscle movements of this eye? So when you looked, it would go with you.
We've already got them connected, but they never move as well. There's all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
And it's a technology. This is an engineering question, we've decided. And I know just the engineer to help us.
Yeah. I thought that'd be really, really cool. You know?
They're all busy.
So ideally what would happen is, so right now I'm actually doing it in the reverse order. Typically what happens is you do the statistics first and you only bring up the questions that don't work with the model. And then you come to patients and clinicians and you say, you know, these questions don't fit our math model. These questions that, that concept that I explained earlier yesterday about how the questions have to function the same for everyone, regardless of age, gender, sex. So any of the questions that don't work would be the only questions that I bring forward to the table. And then I'd say, keep, maybe drop. But over here, because I've only started testing, in this workshop, we're kind of doing it beforehand, earlier. But it's still great data to have because I get to confirm that I used my interview data well, but I also get to use this information later. So I think, do we have 15 minutes left? Okay, so I'll probably just end it at this consensus question actually, because there are a few things that I wanted to go through. But I think like this was really great discussion for me. But for anybody who wishes to stay involved in this keep maybe drop process, we would continue this after I finish the statistics. And all the statistics will take a long time because I need at least 200 patients to complete the entirety of the questionnaire. And once I run the analysis, that's when I can determine which questions actually don't work and which questions do. And then I can come back to a group setting like this and discuss the questions that don't work. So if that's something that you're interested in participating in, I'm actually just going to go back to the slides here. Yeah, look, there were so many things that we would have. Genevieve was actually just telling us earlier that, you know, we spent about maybe 2 hours discussing and we only went through one section of the questionnaire, which is great because it goes to show how much discussion is needed. But it also goes to show that it would be impossible for us to go through all 70 questions in this group setting. So, I want to first thank everyone for having completed the survey that I sent online. And I also want to thank everyone for being so open to sharing your experience in this group setting, especially, you know, when you're talking to people that you're just meeting for the first time. So thank you for that. Now, other ways that you can stay involved post this symposium, there are a few ways. So the first way is to complete the keep maybe drop form. So what I may do is I will send everybody an email with the links to the rest of the questionnaire with the keep maybe drop options. So if that's something you're interested in, you can complete it for as many questions as you want to assign the keep maybe drop to. Otherwise, when I have completed the statistical analysis of my field testing, if you're interested in having this kind of discussion again, but only regarding the questions that don't work well, that we decide we either need to remove or revise, then please do email me and let me know that it's something you'd like to be interested in. Another thing is I mentioned or I shared with everyone that in order to modify the FACE-Q, I had to do conduct a lot of interviews with patients and parents. So I'm actually in the process of writing that manuscript to get it published to disseminate the results. So if you're interested in creating a plain language summary about that data, whether it be a written blog post, a video, anything that you'd like, please do contact me and we can work on doing that together. And the very last thing that I have here, if you'd like to stay involved, is I mentioned that I really learned a lot about the lived experience of retinoblastoma through the interviews that I conducted. And what I realized is for some of the study participants, it was their first time actually openly talking about their experience because I felt that, maybe some people don't like sharing things beyond their family, maybe because they feel like people don't care or they feel like they just don't feel comfortable sharing it with people or they don't have the space to share it with others. So I found that these interviews were maybe somewhat therapeutic for some of the participants. So if you have that kind of experience and you want to share that insight, I am really interested in writing a commentary about patients' experiences in participating through qualitative interviews. So if you'd like to share your insight on that, we can work on writing that commentary together as well. So those are all different ways you can continue to stay involved with me and my project. Of course, there's other opportunities within our lab as well. So my email address is right there. If anyone is interested, it's farheen.con@sickkids.ca. And I think that's pretty much it. And now we can spend the last few minutes kind of talking about what we want to share to the group,
Is there any questions?
or address any questions that anyone may have as well.
I think Vancouver had a comment, perhaps when we were finishing.
Oh,
Dr. Payton, did you have a comment you were starting or had something to say? Something technical.
about engineering?
Can you make a comment?
Dr. Payton, did you have a comment about, I think we heard engineering or something like that you wanted to discuss with all of us?
So the daydreams and hopes of people talking about this will stimulate questions. And Angus was talking about with 3D printing and what you could do with an eye. Why couldn't you have the movement? And it's so much more complex than that. But I think unless you know a little of it, you don't know. And maybe mechanical engineering can help us do better in future. So no reason not to have a parking lot of ideas to help funnel. To me, that's part of the magic of these symposia. Not that we always have the answer, just that we might have a really great question. And then we have the opportunity to collaborate with others to come up with novel answers that nobody ever thought of before.
Yeah. I can expand it. What I was talking to her about was with technology so coming along, TVs are so thin, you can print clothing that you can project on, you can have LCD technology inside clothing now. What if we made a prosthetic that had an LCD front that was connected to the muscle movement of the good eye? So when the person with the prosthetic, when they looked around with their good eye, the artificial eye would track with it due to this. Instead of being a created eye, it would actually be like a screen in their socket.
Angus, that is probably the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
And also probably not addressed in the phase Q, like, because we were talking about video, right? And I was like, well, the biggest thing in video is that just like our eyes don't track with the prosthesis. And so it's like, if you could get that in some ways, like that struck a chord with me, man. I really appreciate that note.
Yeah, it was kind of like a Johnny Mnemonic, Matrix thought I had in my head. It was, but yeah, I thought it'd be pretty cool. And I don't think it's too far off, to be honest.
It actually exists.
So that topic is our next cup of tea topic, 3D printing with Dr. Sagu from England. So Angus, I might reach out to you and see if you're interested in participating and helping create that cup of tea. But anyways, if somebody is interested in learning more, we will be talking about that in June. June will be that cup of tea event.
That sounds like a pretty interesting topic. I mean, I like technology. I like to watch things. I like to see how things are made. And technology is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, so much, nowadays that I don't see, there's no reason why you couldn't put technology like that, a small screen, a small battery, some neurological, or some motion connectors in and wire that up. There's absolutely no reason why. Look at the size of hearing aids now compared to what they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? There's no reason why we can't catch up.
Angus, I actually have some great news for you. I was at a conference on Friday here at Sick Kids. It was the Jack Crawford Day conference, and there was an individual named Dr. Jurisic, I believe. I think you can Google her as Dr. Low Vision or something like that. And she actually gave a whole presentation. I can't remember if it was her or if it was another doctor named Dr. George Nasrallah, but one of them gave a presentation about how there is that technology right now where you have your living eye and then you have the prosthetic eye, and the prosthetic eye is actually an LCD screen, and then it moves based on how your living eye moves. I don't remember the name of the technology, but it exists. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I learned that literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's super cool, because I was just thinking this as well. If you have someone with a prosthetic who doesn't have lid control, like I'm the opposite. I don't have control of my lids. My radiation killed the muscle control of my lids, right? So my eye is always droopy. But you have someone who's the opposite, whose eye is always open. If you had a screen instead of an actual physical prosthetic, that screen could blink with your actual eye. So to someone, unless you're looking closely, you probably wouldn't know, kind of like sleight of hand, right? You wouldn't notice that the lid didn't move, but the eye disappeared and came back with the other eye, and it would give you a little more sense of normality, right?
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yes, I think this will be a great partnership for June. And we'll continue that conversation. Yeah, for sure.
Just send me an email, we can talk.
Yep, absolutely.
And I guess just one final thing I wanted to say before I wrap up is, as I'm sure you may have heard, I am in the field testing phase of this project. So 200 participants is a lot. So I'm taking the next year to a year and a half recruiting patients 8 years old or older to complete the survey that you all have completed using the link I emailed. So one of the ways I'm trying to reach that many patients is through social media. So I just wanted to show you, this is the social media recruitment content I have. So there's an Instagram story here and a Twitter post here. So the Sick Kids social media team has been very kind and has offered to share this for me. And I was wondering if it would be okay for me to reach out to you for some help as well, to help share this content with I will be sharing retweeting and sharing these posts once Sick Kids posts them. But if I could also please encourage you to share these with your communities, or even the links I emailed to you, any healthcare professionals anything like that, any other survivors you may know as well, just so we can really hit those numbers, so that I can then go on to validating this questionnaire. And then the sooner I hit those numbers, the sooner we can come back and have this keep baby drop discussion. So
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I'd also like to say something that I think, I don't know if anyone's aware of this or not, but I came across a woman, I think she's in Ottawa, I think it is. She has a movement called the checkered patch. Has anyone heard of this?
No.
It's what she's designed is it's a patch, meaning you could sew it on or have an emblem or a pin. And what it does is it lets people know that you have low vision without necessarily having to have an aid with you to make people, because like for myself, I'm legally blind, but I can still see enough to get around. I don't need to have a red and white cane, but I still have low vision, and I don't see on my right side. So being able to wear a patch to let people know, oh, this person has low vision, you can casually and discreetly let people know what your issues are without having to announce it to the world. So you guys should check that out just Google Checker Patch project, and I think it's a really cool. It's something I think we could get behind and kind of help promote.
Oh, yeah, I have the mic. My bad, hold on.
I just wanted to say thank you, Angus, for sharing that with us.
No problem.
My question, regarding filling out the face queue and everything, I can't read the social media post well from here. So like inclusion exclusion criteria wise, do you need to be Canadian to fill it out? And do you need to be affiliated with like a sick kid? Like, do you need to be a sick kids patient to fill it out?
Nope, you do not need to be Canadian. You just need to be able to read, write, and communicate in English, and you do not need to be a sick kids patient either. You just need to be 8 years old or older.
And one comment, if people could comment about it, because I don't have the experience in it, about the low vision and access to these posts, and how to make sure that any comments that Farheen could take away, that everybody is included in these communications, and they could know the information and fill it out. So if you could pass that along, please, to her.
Yeah, any tips, because I understand I want to make sure that these posts or the recruitment is as accessible as possible and as inclusive as possible as well. So if anyone has any tips, I'd be more than happy to learn from you.
It's Sabrine. I just wanted to add something. I think it was in this group yesterday, right? That we were discussing our personal journey with the healthcare with our healthcare regarding retinoblastoma. I think it was in this group. So I just wanted to add that for myself personally, I was not referred to the CNIB at that time anywhere along my healthcare journey, even after I was referred to another ophthalmologist. And it's just an agency that I came across on my own. So I think at some point, and I don't know where this would fit in with our discussion, or where where this information could be conveyed. But I think it's really important that patients, maybe not initially, but somewhere maybe a little bit further down the line, be referred to what is now Vision Loss Rehabilitation Ontario for the daily living skills and accessibility, accessible technology, all those types of services for patients to benefit from. And there's a misunderstanding still out there that these services are only for people that are totally blind, but it's not. That's part of our client population that we serve, but majority of our client population have low vision. So and even if in the case of RB, if a person just has even really good vision in the good eye, there's still a lot of services and equipment that people could benefit from. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for that, Samarine. I think each province is a bit different, and we actually have what's called a vision rehabilitation specialist, who's a physician in our unit that's not part of the CNIB, because the CNIB vision rehabilitation here is a little bit more limited. But this is a question for the group. Could we invite her or include her and make her part of this group to spark her interest and move things along a bit?
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
I will see her tomorrow evening. I will pass this along.
Great.
All right, I think that's it from us. So thank you again, everybody, for your input. And thank you, Ivana, for working with me and for collaborating with me to plan and execute this workshop. And I guess I'll summarize all of our efforts in the main room. So thank you again, everybody. And again, if you ever have any questions, if you want to stay connected and involved, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, so you'll automatically be moved over. So just sit tight and we'll meet back in 39
Thanks, Farheen. Thanks, Ivana.
Thank you. Bye.